Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors, members of the public, our friends from the media, and of course staff as well. And to those watching on our live stream, welcome to our Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting today, the 21st of July 2016. No mai haramai, welcome to you all, and of course, I forgot also to Ms Morrison as well. So I'd like to ask, we do have apologies. We've had apologies received from Councillor Bentley, Councillor Hunt, and Mr Eugene Berryman-Kemp. Now, are there any further apologies? Yes, Your Worship.
Councillor Maxwell for lateness, but it just depends when the AGM.
Oh, yes, I understand that. Thank you very much. So may I have a mover and a seconder that these apologies be accepted, please? Thank you, Councillor Gould. Thank you, Councillor Kent. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. Carried. Any declarations of interest, please? Thank you. Urgent business. Now, we do have, there's a matter here under urgent business, and it's around the remits going to the Local Government New Zealand conference. They're going to be, I'd like those to be considered later in the meeting, obviously before the public excluded session, so that we can give members, councillors, the opportunity to discuss and provide feedback which can be used at the AGM. So I'd like to take that prior to going into public excluded. Thank you. Councillor Gould, do you have an item for urgent business?
Yes. Been speaking to a number of people on the east side, including a retired scientist and a group of people independent to the group which is set up. They want the opportunity of being notified if any more heavy industrial operations go into the Ngāpuna area.
Thank you. It's not an item to be discussed today. It's not an urgent matter, and no decision is required. But thank you. We've got officers here who can note what you've asked, what you've spoken about. Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Yes, Madam. It may not be, Madam Chair, it may not be so much urgent business as a matter of procedure. I just wish to raise the issue of the item concerning the Polynesian Spa pools and their pricing, and just raise the issue that these price increases have already been put into effect and apparently are actually out in the public domain. So maybe we should be actually discussing it in public.
Sorry, I wasn't aware that they were already in the public domain, but they did say from the beginning of July, didn't they? I thought that we might have been just...
My information is they've been charging the increased prices from either Monday the 11th or Monday the 18th.
Thank you. Then I unless there's any major... Yes, sorry. Ms Morrison?
When I bought my pass the other day, it was still at the previous price. It was yesterday. I purchased a monthly, so...
Right. Thank you. Do you want to... well, thank you. Well, I'd just like to pursue this a little further. Thank you.
Through you, the Chair, the price increases, from my understanding, are due to kick off 1 August, if their proposed price increases with 1 August.
It may be incorrect information that I received.
Thank you.
An email I received this morning.
Thank you. But it does raise the issue as to whether or not it really is relevant to go into public excluded. Perhaps we could have a bit of discussion on that. I'm happy to take that now, Your Worship, and then Councillor Sharank.
Yes, I don't recall going into confidential in the past. There is no competition to this unique opportunity. I've got to be convinced that it is commercially sensitive.
Yes, and Councillor Sharank.
Agree with Her Worship. We've never gone into confidence on this matter. It's a matter that the public should be aware of, and it's already been floated at Polly Pools that there will be a price increase, so there's no need for us to be in confidence.
Yes, I'll just confer quickly with the CEO, but I'd like to bring this into the public session. Thank you. Thank you very much. We are going to move that, what was to be a confidential item into the public session of our meeting this afternoon. And thank you for raising it. Thank you. Of our minutes, confirmation of minutes, the minutes of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting held on the 15th of June 2016. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sharang. Thank you, Councillor McVicker. And I'll put that motion. Oh, yes, certainly.
Madam Chair, bottom of page 8, Seismic Policy Reduction Committee, recommendation was that a councillor should be involved in that committee. Has any appointment been made?
Thank you. I recall that request, and at this stage, no. But this, I think we agreed at the time it would be good to have. So thank you very much. Yes, Ms. Morrison.
Yes, Madam Chair. On page 10, just asking around the accuracy of the note of the division for 6.4.2. And I just note that myself and Mr. Berryman Camp's names are not noted in that. And we voted for. Just wondering if the record could be amended to note.
Thank you.
And if I may, 2 other matters on that same page. Just an update on the wastewater treatment plant. This is on previous page, apologise. 6.3.3.
Yes.
If we'll be getting an update on where the council officers are at in engaging with the mana whenua, and then also an update on the edit plans.
Yes, we're just doing the minutes though at this point in time.
Okay.
The minutes. Those will come through in the O&M in our O&M meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, look, I'll put that motion. We have a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting held on the 15th of June 2016 be confirmed as a true and correct record with those, the amendment there that you made. Thank you. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. Carried. Now I'd like to welcome our Youth Council representatives, Samantha Warena and Eric Lee, and you're going to give us a verbal update. Thank you. Welcome. No mai haramai.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to present our report.
Thank you.
This is the Youth Council, the event the Youth Council helped to promote and supported with the volunteer efforts. It's the Matariki Star Search, which is like a talent quest. Our feedback was a great success with receptive audience and amazing youth talent, and we were delighted to be helpful to the event. We formed a subcommittee to support the SciWay work presented us by the staff. We also discussed the support initiatives around the poverty workshop in August, when the lady came in to give us a talk about what it's about, and the Heartstopper Challenge and the World Indigenous Suicide Prevention Conference hosted by the Ngāti Pēkēau and attended by our chair for the Indigenous Youth Summit. The conference declaration at the end of this report highlights a challenge for the council to foster a safer and caring society included in the reduction of alcohol and drugs. A leading youth council workshop with Councillor Tapsell was postponed, so youth council reviews previous youth council feedback. These ones were about how much the impact has youth council has on the decisions made, and should there be more engagements from the youth council.
The Youth Council's members have also been advocates outside of the Youth Council. For example, in the UN Youth Declaration, one of our Youth Councillors was Hai Su, who participated in this. Before we broke for the school holidays, we also presented some Youth Council badges in a ceremony. Right now, the Youth Council are on school holiday break, but we maintain a social media activity as well as preparing for our next week's meeting with the Junior Chamber of Commerce and the elections. And for the future, we are preparing to support the 19th of August Poverty Workshop by calling for youth to participate in a lunchtime panel to discuss perspectives on poverty and how to address it. Once flyers are available, these will be shared in our schools. We are also preparing our own portfolio reporting, as each youth councillor has areas of interest to lead and council portfolios to learn about. Do any of you have any questions about our presentation?
Yes, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, tēnā korua. Could I go back to the slide on, I think it was your last slide, Chris, Warren? Sorry, Eric. Your last slide, you had a statistic there regarding one back further. Yeah, so that in the middle at the bottom there, the New Zealand male adolescent suicide rate, worst of 27 high income. Is there a word at the bottom there? Is that countries or? I don't quite understand that statistic.
Yes, countries.
Countries. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Yes, Your Worship.
On the suicide prevention conference and especially the youth workshop, is there anything council can do that actually contributes to building a stronger community in terms of these sad statistics?
As during our meetings, we haven't talked in depth about what we can actually do to help, but we'll be happy to put in our
It'd be
agenda
great
next
if we
meeting.
got that feedback.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your work on council, and thank you for spending taking time out of your holiday program to come and be with us this afternoon. And you're most welcome to sit and observe if you'd like. Thank you. Kia ora.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that the Youth Council report be received. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. Kia ora. Carried. We're up to our staff report. Item number 6, recommendation 1. The draft Sustainable Living Strategy. I'd like to call for a mover and a seconder to receive the report, the draft Sustainable Living Strategy, that it be received. Can I have a thank you, Councillor Donaldson, and thank you, Your Worship. It's been moved and received. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. Good afternoon, Councillor Wepper, and good afternoon, Rosemary.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and I have great pleasure on behalf of my portfolio, the Sustainable Living Strategy, to come to you today and present our strategy. I'm sure you've all thoroughly enjoyed reading it, and you will understand why we're very proud of it. It's taken us a long time to get to this place, and you will have seen why with the amount of stakeholder engagement and also the city scan process that we went through. And interestingly, today I received for the first time guidance from Melbourne in terms of our scan, and with 71 pages to read, I didn't read them all before I came, but suffice to say our steering group will have a lot of work ahead of us as we evaluate their suggestions and some great ideas for us going forward for our city. So I just want to take the opportunity now to first of all thank Rosemary Viskovich, my portfolio lead. She's done a huge amount of work, enormous amount of work, and thank you very much, Rosemary, and also for Amy for her oversight. And I'd like to introduce only 2 members of my steering group could come today, and that's largely because, you know, we've changed our times a bit for this meeting, you know, so only 2 could make it, but all of them on page 5, it will tell you all who has contributed, apart from Te Rangi Kahiki Bidwa, who was an original member, but because of her commitments, she wasn't able to continue to, even though she thoroughly enjoyed it. And that just gives you on page 5 of the strategy where they've come from, so you'll see there's a wide range there. So the people here today is Winton Smith. So Winton, can you sort of stand up and say hello? And she, Winton has got lots of experience in policy and in the areas of energy and the built environment, corporate governance and sustainable product design. And also we've got here Keith Gallagher. If you wouldn't mind standing up, Keith, and he's a sustainable assessor for the Rotorua Business Charter, and they represent 74 local sustainable businesses. So thank you for coming today. We really appreciate it, and they will help us answer any questions that you might have. So now I'll hand it over to Rosemary, and she can go through the highlights. I'm sure you've enjoyed reading it, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to present this work today. It's been a huge effort from a lot of people. I'm just the figurehead. So Rotorua Lakes Council is a leading city participant in the UN Global Compact Cities Programme, a commitment Council made in May 2015. We're the first district in New Zealand and the 100th in the world. The Compact is the largest voluntary corporate responsibility initiative in the world, and the Cities Programme is the urban arm that councils around the world join. Part of Rotorua being a leading city, our commitment is to have a sustainable living strategy. We use the City Scan tool from the UN Global Compact as the first step in our journey to take stock of current challenges facing the district and the measures currently in place to respond to them. A little bit about our community engagement, and this started back in November 2014 when we had a couple of meetings. The Appendix 5 in the strategy is a list of summary of the engagement. Our first meetings looked at what the Rotorua 2030 goals meant to people in relation to sustainable living. We then had the ideas store over that summer, and that generated a lot of interest from the topics on the stands and gave an indication of areas of people's concern, but not in a lot of depth. The City Scan tool generated the areas of strength and weakness and information data on a wide range of public reports and evidence for our assessments. The topic experts, including steering group people, contributed to those areas, and we used this information as the basis for our community engagement going forward. There was a wide invitation to community groups to invite us to attend their meetings so we could share the ideas and seek their feedback, and we had a lot of assistance from the steering group and the partnership team at Council with that. We had 9 focus groups which discussed in more detail areas that had been raised during those groups, during the engagement, or areas that we thought were gaps in the engagement. We also used an online survey as a different method, so if people weren't necessarily engaging with us face-to-face, they had an opportunity to talk to us about the relative importance of the topic areas from the City Scan. We also had continued iwi engagement that went on for some time according to when meetings arose that we were able to get to, and we also considered feedback on the waste strategy and the long-term plan submissions. A number of those were highly relevant to the topic as well. So what does sustainable living mean for Rotorua? We listen to people across our community, and different people and groups place a really different emphasis and values on the contributing elements. The standard definitions, like the 3 pillars of sustainability being environment, economy and society, didn't adequately reflect what people were telling us. So we developed this Rotorua model. So this represents the interdependent themes. It's about Rotorua being based in this place, the land and the lakes, and the main branches incorporating other ideas that are important to people in Rotorua. Our voyage. So the voyage, sustainable living is a complex concept. Council is just one part of the community, and the objectives are complex and need support across the agencies, te arawa, the community, business sectors to achieve outcomes. So to that extent, this strategy is framed from the perspective of Council working with the community. So this waka model was developed to identify the complementary roles of Council and community and the different players in actually going forward. The themes of action around the strategy are around leadership, collaboration and innovation change management, and it's not always Council doing the leading. In some cases, Council takes direct responsibility and provides leadership, for instance, provision of waste services. Other areas we collaborate with partners like our local food network. In other places we might encourage and support things but don't have direct responsibility, so we might be hosting information for stakeholders. We've come to 6 objectives. The wide range of topics covered in the City Scan and ideas for engagement came down to these six distinct objective areas. It's more than in some of the other strategies because it's such a broad topic. So pictured here are objectives 1 and 2. People are resilient to change, and people in Rotorua will at all times have access to enough safe and nutritious food for a healthy and active lifestyle. The food one's interesting. It's something which is very much a very strong theme that came through the community that wasn't specifically elicited in the Rotorua 2030 goals. We've used examples to demonstrate strategy in action throughout the document, And these include examples of things that are led by council, areas of collaborative effort and community-led efforts, which all demonstrate the range of contributions towards sustainable living in Rotorua. The next two objectives around people living in affordable, healthy homes and our land and water being sustainably managed and supporting the natural environment. And the final two, we minimise our waste and recover its value, and Rotorua being ready for the approaching post-carbon economy through greater energy efficiency and reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Just a couple of examples to talk through. So this is an example from Objective 3. The actions in the strategy are parallel to strategy development. So Appendix 1 gives, on pages 30 to 32, gives an estimated time frame against the list of actions. So we're trying to indicate the strategy supports a number of actions that are already underway, such as the local food network, Rotorua sewage program. There's a number of things which are supported by the strategy. There are other actions that are estimated to occur in 1 to 3 or beyond periods. Some things can be progressed within existing budgets, and others may require a separate business case and consideration at the next long-term plan. In relation to this Objective 3, a contractor has recently completed some initial work identifying potential partners for the provision of social housing for pensioners. We're interested in partners for this in order to try and attract community housing provider funding, which could improve the quality and sustainability of the housing. Councils are not eligible to be community housing providers. Our next steps will involve investigating supply and demand for a range of types of housing, from emergency to supported rental through to independent ownership, and considering the past, current and future trends and challenges to be taken into consideration. The steps after that will be working closely with stakeholders involved in preparing a housing plan. Another example, Objective 2, the Rotorua Local Food Network, and pictured here is the first time they met and the most recent time they met. So this project was progressed due to the high level of interest of people at a Living Well focus group back in 2015. The attendees by the end of the meeting were swapping their contact details and had clearly made a connection and were really passionate about the topic. So a collaborative facilitating group, including myself for council, Jasmine Jackson for Healthy Families, Rotorua, and Dana and Rhonda from Tuatua Ora Public Health, have continued to support this, the community's members' desire to work together. The group has developed a charter, they've generated ideas and are working on a number of projects, including developing a seed hub, shared community kitchen facility, food rescue, community cooking classes. Community gardeners are among the members. The network enables members of the community to meet one another and connect on common areas of interest to work together. It's been a really good forum to connect with the new market development, and participants have identified a need for workshops on developing new business and on social enterprise. So final slide, the next steps. We consider this a live working document. It will interact with the spatial plan and the unique Rotorua proposition work and receive further community feedback. And following this iterative process, we expect the final strategy would be presented to the new council in 2017. So that's a very brief summary of 18 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I know, Councillor Whipawai, you're always so enthusiastic about your portfolio, because it actually is a very good document, taking that planned approach to the sustainability of our future here in Rotorua, so thank you. I know we do have some questions coming to you, so thank you. Yes, Your Worship.
Congratulations, Councillor Whipper and Rosemary and the steering group. It's great to receive this at this time, actually. And it's lofty and aspirational, but there are issues in here that might be considered when you look at your page 30 and 31 about those underway and where we could go in the next 3 years. Are there some low-hanging fruit? You've got some that are already blue. Are there some simple low-hanging fruit things that we could get going? Because some of these, like the pleased to see the district heating systems, you know, coming in, and also the homes strategy here. But are there some, I don't mean quick fixes, because this is a journey, but would you suggest that there are some we'd bite off quicker than the others?
I think you can see in the next LGP 1 to 3 years, there's the underways, there's ones that are already, we can easily implement, like the Te Reo Māori and public signage, things like that. That's pretty obvious. And also that's come through from Melbourne today with some really good ideas as well that we've yet to go through. But I really asked some of our members from the steering group to come and answer some of their questions, because they'll have some ideas, and particularly Keith and Winton have put so much work into our strategy, and it's all voluntary. All of the members are voluntary and spent a huge amount of time, so I want to give them some airtime. Do either of you want to answer that?
Hi, I'm Winton. In general terms, I would say the low-hanging fruit's really based around information provision and sharing, getting people to talk to each other and discover for themselves solutions, and that cuts across the entire range of issues and objectives that we have here. Perhaps more specifically in the area that I'm concerned in with it, which is energy and climate change, there are lots of opportunities to save money, and obviously that's a incentive around using energy more efficiently, purchasing technologies that save council and homeowners, etc., money in terms of using, operating their facilities and housing and so on. So those would be two key areas.
Did you want to add, Keith? Any low-hanging fruit?
Yeah, since I've got the mic. I know. From my own point of view, I always look at the things that you can do the cheapest and get the most bang for your buck, and if I have a soapbox, I'd always say bring in a sugar sweetened beverage policy as quick as you possibly can, because it gives you the most bang for your buck. It'll alter the health, it'll kick up the most fuss, it always does, so it gives you the most awareness across everything. And it doesn't cost anything, but it's a bit like the smoke-free policy we brought in, or the government brought in. It does have ongoing effect, and it'll be positive all the way through. So if you were going to do one thing, I would say do that. I know these guys get annoyed with me sending out emails and saying it, but if you have to do anything, do that. If you only have to do one thing. But if you want to do lots of things, there's lots of low-hanging fruit you can do, but from a council's point of view, it always comes down to, you guys talking cost benefits, you need to look at what you can afford to do, and that's the low-hanging fruit, what you can afford to do, because you'll get crucified no matter what you do. So you may as well get crucified for something that costs nothing.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I particularly like the discussion under Objective 5 about waste minimisation, because if I look at Objective 1, which is to have people are resilient to change and are able to adapt and thrive, the feedback I'm getting is people are resistant to change in terms of waste management, and so it's great to see that discussion and what the bigger picture is around waste minimisation and recycling, and good to see that public education to increase the knowledge and practice in recycling is part of the strategy. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, and I'd like to see more of that implemented. Thank you.
Councillor Gould and Councillor Tapsell.
Madam Chair, the document is great, but I think we just need a few minor alterations. The image on page 22 is not sharp. Zero waste on page 23. I don't think you get to zero waste, but you get to close to zero waste. The picture on page 10 and 17 of the fireplace, I do not know whether it's approved by Plenty Regional Council fireplace. If it's not, then it shouldn't be in there, because we're talking about 2030. The page 10, the long term, all people housed to meet their needs. I realise there's a few people out there who are not keen on being housed. They're not in houses, they've got their own arrangements. That's just minor. But one of the other complaints is we've got a population of 65,300 people. We've got 22,000 people of Maori descent, which is 11,000 Te Arawa descent and 11,000 from the other iwi tribes throughout New Zealand. And yet you've got Maori wording bigger than the English wording on your different pages throughout the book.
Yes, certainly.
Yes, I thought someone may bring that to our attention. So it is purposeful and inclusive. And as far as certainly all the photos that are used have been put in with permission of those people, and it is a compliant fireplace. So a lot of those things we'll take on board, Councillor Gould. But I think that we'll just listen to those. Any response from any of the steering
Thank
group?
you.
Did you have anything you wanted to say in particular?
My only comment would be that implicit in your suggestion is that Māori language need only be limited to Māori people, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think there's an opportunity through this document and lots of public documents to open that language up to Pākehā who are interested in learning it.
Thank you. Yes, Rosemary.
Could I just add to that? I guess some of the really important things people told us they value here and what is special about this place is the environment and the culture. So we really wanted to reflect that throughout the document as well. That it's really important that that's actually something iconic about this place that is different from other places. And sometimes we don't realise it because we're living with it all the time.
Thank you. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your response on that too. That was a very good response. I really must thank you for your presentation today, and I must say this is the most exciting and innovative strategy I have ever seen. So congratulations on that. Firstly, the questions I did have is I saw you've undertaken an impressive amount of consultation. Well done. But I also wondered if you have engaged the Enviro schools at all. And secondly, you no doubt share a vision with Baupini Regional Council, fireplaces and such. Have you discussed the goals of the strategy with them or aligned with their goals in any way? And just lastly, amazing work has gone into the neighbourhood reinvigoration project with Ngāpuna, which is on page 12. It really was amazing work, but I know other communities will be very interested in getting that put in their area too. So how can other communities get involved in neighbourhood reinvigoration projects with you in future?
Can I answer that last one first? I actually met with Western Heights today. We've been working with them slowly, trying to help them be ready for a neighbourhood reinvigoration. So they are indicating they're nearly ready, and I was about to contact Dave to let him know we'll arrange a meeting. Basically, the idea is to have coordinated council services around those projects, so we go in and deliver a complete project, and it's really quite new, and every community is different as what their aspirations are. The idea is that those are led by what the community wants. We started looking at prioritising communities, and there was quite a long list and very hard to differentiate, but readiness is one of the really key factors of it being successful. So, and also our capacity as to how many communities we can work with at any one time. So we are actively looking at that through the portfolio. And in relation to the Regional Council, we have had discussions with them off and on, and I have links with key colleagues around particular projects, but we will also be taking it back to them as one of the stakeholders in the near future.
And if I could just add to that, I think because of my portfolio, I'm on the air quality group, the geothermal, and so there's some good links there. And as you'll understand, this is a start, it's a living document, and so we expect that there will be more involvement as we go forward, particularly through this and the spatial plan and other things we're doing.
I couldn't quite hear what was that last one? Oh, the school, Enviro schools. Oh, thank you. Yes. Thank you. Councillor Stewart, then Councillor Kent.
I think this document is a fantastic snapshot of what our Rotorua community is. It's not all about businesses, it's not all about residentials or farms, it's about what are the issues that are concerning the community as a whole. And to garner that snapshot, a huge amount of work must have gone in, and I congratulate those who put a volunteer involvement into it. I really appreciate that on behalf of the whole community. However, this also shows, Councillor Weber, your passion for your sustainability, as I have for sport and recreation. And it really grates me, Madam Chair, when I pick up the newspaper and see some idiot say that the portfolios aren't working, that they're inconsistent, and look at the, like with sport and recreation, the 3 years of hard work went into the development of our strategy, likewise this one. And so I just want to put that on record that I really appreciate the work, and I'm sure Councillor Webber's already mentioned it, of those people who put their hands up because they love this community and they wanted to see it thrive and grow. One of the things I do want to say that I think is highlighted in here is that you've recognised iwi's roles and traditional aspirations in terms of our natural resources. And I think that's important. I think that that's been skimmed over in the past. And the recognition that we need a children's strategy for Rotorua. I think that's absolutely essential. And like Councillor Tapswell, the success you had in motivating the Ngāpuna community, who have been wrecked over the last 20 years with controversy, industrial development, noise, God knows smell, to engage them and get the response and the commitment from that community is a huge tick for you and the strategy. So I think, Madam Chair, this is the beginning rather than an end. It's not full of the answers, it's full of the issues. And I think we look at it that way and we take things forward. And so I would like to, if it's appropriate and you're in the chair, Madam Chair, move a vote of thanks to the Strategy Committee for the hours and years of work that they've put in to bring forward a document that we can all work with in the future and develop. And they've already signalled when they believe certain timing should come through. This is exactly what a strategy should show. So if I may, Madam Chair, if you want to hold that motion over, but I would certainly like to move a motion of thanks to the voluntary.
Thank you,
group that
thank
put
you.
this together. Thank
Can
you,
I
Madam
just
Chair.
add, actually, Councillor Stewart, you are quite right. This is actually the result of a portfolio in action, a portfolio lead in action in this sustainable document. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In 2013, when we were elected, the councillors sat round at a workshop and decided what was the number one priority that we would all get behind and what really had to happen for Rotorua. And the decision was made that number one priority was a cost-effective and efficient council. Now, that objective is totally missing from this strategy, and yet I would have thought that being cost-effective and efficient in terms of rates and everything else was imperative to sustainable living in Rotorua, where we have a large amount of poverty. So why is that aspect totally missing from this strategy? And my second question comes to the timing of the release of this document into the public with the election coming up, because by the time this document, if it gets approved now, then goes for approval for council, and then actually goes out into the public, it's going to hit right on the election. And I think that is an absolute no-no, and that any release should be deferred until after the election, because portfolios may not even exist after the election.
Some presumptions being made there, actually, because this is business as usual. This is definitely business as usual. Councillor Webber.
Yes, I probably could respond to that. I think throughout the whole of sustainability, it's implicit that if you're looking at saving energy, you're saving money. So there's a whole lot of strategies in there that, we haven't focused on that. It covers so much. But I think that the whole of the steering group are fully aware of our community and the environment and the aspirations. And as I said before, we all want cost savings. So, and it's about partnerships and it's about understanding our community. In terms of the release of this document, it's not a draft that we're going to go out and have feedback and have a public consultation. It's a draft merely that it's a living document. So I don't see why there should be any objection to going out of the community. This is purely timing. It took this long to get it together. It is not planned to coincide with elections. It's purely and simply it took this long to get here because all of the work involved from our steering group and from our portfolio lead, which has worked exceptionally hard. So I really don't know what the fuss is about there, Councillor Kent.
Well, Madam Chair, if I can point out here, the suggested recommendation here is that it be put out for community distribution and discussion. That's consultation.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, it's community discussion. It is not, we're not having a formal process where people come and speak to it. It's just out there for people to discuss, and over time, they'll feed back through a process.
Thank you.
So
It is a living...
So is it a consultation document, or is it a publication saying how good we are, this council?
Well, actually, this document was put together through consultation with a large group of stakeholders. And it will go out, and people can comment on it, or indeed just look at it and refer to it. It is a living document, and this is the first part of it actually going out to the community to have a look at. And obviously to see reflected what they've actually had through their input, to see it reflected in this document. So I'm definitely, and I'm sure everybody will be happy for it to go out. Is there, yes, Your Worship. Oh, thank you.
Yes, very sad observation there, where we've had a community-led steering group working with a councillor-led portfolio, and I don't want you to be insulted about the work that you've done. We've been waiting for this document. I've been waiting for this document and putting pressure on. This isn't about politics. This is about our community. And this is about building a strong, resilient community that can take the shocks and also knows where it's going. It's a discussion document that will go out to the community while I'm in the chair. But, Madam Chair, my question to Rosemary is our obligations to the United Nations now with this next step. Are we involved in that wider village, really, of the United Nations compact cities?
Yes, we are. So having an action plan, a strategy, is part of our commitment to that organisation. And one of the things that the city scan is relatively new. We were one of the first towns to be using that. And as part of the lead up to Habitat 3, one of the side conferences, which is somewhere in Indonesia, we're actually Skyping in next week just to give a 10-minute update as to how the city scan worked for us, how we did our community engagement and developed the strategy around that. So it is something that other people are sharing and learning from each other. And yeah, we're Skyping, we're definitely not travelling there. They did invite us, and I said we're not travelling all that way for 10 minutes.
Just comment, when you become a signatory to a United Nations document, which we all did here with great aplomb, you have obligations, and we have obligations as Rotorua Lakes Council to that global commitment. And so it doesn't stop because of an election cycle. It's ongoing, and this is a journey, as is outlined in here, to 2030 and beyond. So those obligations must be met.
Thank you. Ms Morrison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Te Tatau o Te Arawa have been involved in the Sustainable Portfolio Group since December, so we've only sort of been inputting for a short while of its time. So, and in that time, and this is from the members involved, they have felt that the process has really embodied what the Te Arawa Partnership is about, and so for the first time, we're able to see actually in print the outputs of what working closer together with the council looks like. So thank you very much to your committee from our members that are on the board, and they look forward to continuing it.
And Councillor Donaldson, and sorry, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. In terms of point 2 of the recommendation, which Councillor Kent highlights, the community discussion has been ongoing on a number of these objectives. The wastewater strategy, for example, that project's been going for 2 years. The waste minimisation strategy, that discussion's out there, as I've indicated. We've been getting feedback and emails now that we're getting close to the implementation of the new residential waste collection regime. So I think the discussion's well underway, and I think it's really useful to have all of those strategies gathered together in one public discussion document. But the discussion, as others have alluded, has well started and is ongoing. So look, I'm happy to move point 2 of the recommendation, Madam Chair.
Actually, I think Councillor Stewart moved. Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor McVicker.
Madam Chair, I read this document and initially was suitably impressed with what you have achieved here. I did have a few questions, and I'd like to ask one, if I may, first and foremost. And page 17, regarding healthy homes, you've got remove barriers to and encourage development of smaller homes. Can you give me a background as to why we would be promoting smaller homes?
Basically, some of the elements of affordability around the size, the form of land tenure. There's a number of things that can help us have a range of different types of homes of different price ranges and different forms of tenure. Obviously, leasehold properties, for instance, you're not paying the same for owning land, so that can influence affordability. Having smaller homes, often commercially driven projects completely might be building very large homes simply because they can make more profit on that, but actually what the community's needs for is something they can afford, and we need more smaller homes, and looking at some of the shared community spaces and things like that in a more village kind of concept. So there's examples around the place of people trying that, and I think it's something that would improve affordability here if we look at that. And it's part of, I guess, talking through with the spatial plan and district plan people as well around how do we enable that.
Add to that briefly, Madam Chair, some of this discussion came around people saying older people want a lifestyle, so they want to sort of live in a community, not in a residential village because they don't think they're old enough, but to have some kind of space where they can store all their toys, you know, all the boys' toys, all the camper van and the motorbikes and stuff. So there's some interesting models around, including papakainga, and that hasn't been progressed, and that's been around for a while. So there's a lot of opportunities there for us to think quite differently to what we do currently.
I gathered that was where you were coming from, but one could argue that if we're going to sell Rotorua and attract investors and people to come and live and play here, I don't think promoting smaller homes is necessarily the correct way. Maybe more efficient homes, maybe a different word other than smaller. It creates a bit of an impression that we're out to have smaller homes across the board. But however, that's one point. The other question I had is on page 34 on, and the criteria in the city scan issues. I find things like education, health, the social issues, many of them are central government issues, and once again we're getting into that territory where, you know, how far do we get involved in those issues, and how far, you know, should we back off? And I find some of the criteria questionable, like fair work, activity of trade unions and things like that, and climate change itself. You know, we've never ever really previously, in previous years to my knowledge, at this council talked about climate change. And given the fact that New Zealand represents 0.005% of the worldwide issue, what are we going to achieve here in little old Rotorua? I know you've got to start somewhere, but I'm just questioning the fact that we have, look, here's a classic one, sea level rise, a medium danger to us. So can I suggest that we critique the criteria and come up with the more realistic ones?
I suspect this is the United Nations
Thank you. Definitely
scan.
want to
Yes, Rosemary.
respond to that. So the criteria, and certainly the steering group, when we were looking at the criteria, there was some very healthy debate went on around some of these things. Because it's an international tool, it doesn't necessarily perfectly reflect the scope of local government in New Zealand. And so we were able to answer that, but it was also reflecting, when we were sort of scoring things, then finding evidence to support the arguments for or against how we'd scored things, there was definitely healthy debate about what is the scope, and the question was, is it something that, it's not just is it something that's urgent, is it something that matters to people here? So there was, it created a discussion, and there's no one right answer to any of those things, but it definitely created a discussion, and that was really the purpose of the city scan, was to actually create some stuff for people to debate and discuss. So it did that very well, but certainly some of the items are not relevant to the scope of local government. In relation to climate change, whether New Zealand and certainly Rotorua are a very small part, but if it's happening, we will have to mitigate, so we will have to adapt, even if we're not a strong mitigation force. There are things coming that we'll need to plan for, and I talk about climate refugees from the coast here, but there are things that will happen around the world that will impact on Rotorua eventually that we should be aware of.
Thank you. Rosemary, I just wanted to ask you, because we've used the United Nations sort of model or scan, city scan, is there an opportunity in the future to more New Zealanderize it? Because I actually agree with Councillor McVicker when I see here child labour, etc. I mean, to me it's like this would suit more developing countries for some things, and particularly on those pages there. So I don't know whether, because it's a living document, there is the opportunity to more New Zealanderize it rather than to say, well, this is what we've got to use, because we have to have, the ownership sits with us, and it has to be more reflective of what we feel. I'm just asking.
Absolutely. I mean, the UN Global Compact is based on 10 principles, which are basically related to international law and covenants and conventions and so on. So that's where a lot of that comes from. And certainly some of the things when we were assessing, we thought, well, some of this is not something we really worry about in New Zealand. And then every so often we think, well, actually, maybe we should worry a little bit, but maybe not as much as a third world country. But it was a useful exercise to look at that. It's an international tool, so it needs to cover lots of different places, but it certainly did give us scope to say some things are definitely more of a concern here, and that's what we wanted to focus on. So it was, yeah, I think it's one of those, the learnings when we talk to the others next week, to hear what other countries think as well.
Councillor Stewart, you had a query.
Just in response to some of the criticism that's been levelled at what this strategy has. I mean, in terms of the city scan issues, it is issues in our community that members of our community have said they either think are major issues or not issues at all. And it indicates there what they say, whether it's critical, major, or whatever. So I think it's an awareness thing of a global or sort of an overall picture of what Rotorua is, because I mean some of these things we don't have any impact on, but at times we are asked to advocate for our community. One of them here which I got involved in, and I know Councillor Tapsell did, was substance abuse. Now people say it's of moderate concern. It doesn't say we all jump out on the street and start waving placards. It's just an indication that in our community there is moderate concern. It even covers terrorism, it covers safe and favourable working conditions. It's just a snapshot of what our community thinks in terms of the issues that are facing them, whether they're of major concern or of no concern. And that's why I believe it is a very, very valuable resource in terms of a snapshot of Rotorua. And if I was a developer, I'd be getting hold of this and saying, okay, what are the concerns in Rotorua? Access to nutritional food. Will that impact me on coming to Rotorua and spending $10 million on a new forestry? No. And so on and so on. Access to adequate housing. Critical issue. Absolutely. And you've raised it with smaller houses. Now what Councillor McVicker said about he doesn't want a perception that Rotorua is now going to be a town of small houses. But what this strategy is recognised, as I read it, is that there is a need within our community for pockets of smaller houses, rather than everybody, going from 180 square metre houses down to 65 or something. So I think you just need to read between the lines. I think it's a brilliant, as I said earlier, it's a snapshot of what Rotorua is. And I thank you for that.
If I could clarify, at the workshop in Melbourne, on the city scan document and the city scan tool, we raised the issue, New Zealand raised the issue about we're a district, but then you realise there's a mix of developing countries and developed, and Melbourne is a highly developed signatory to this and is the centre of the southern end of this United Nations obligation. So we can call it what we like, but we use the tool. That is a universal tool, and we make it ours, and that's what I see reflected in this document. And the other point I wanted to make was actually climate change really matters, and so does ocean rise, because we are in a community, we're not far away, we have some civil defence and emergency responses that we have to make if there are issues relating to ocean rise. So we should be prepared. And that's all this reminds us of. And the other issue I want to raise completely with Councillor Stewart here about urban design. And I think the inner city urban design is a very useful tool for us going forward. There are certainly many people asking to sell their houses and move into the inner city. That's smaller homes. So what we would see as a result of a community discussion is how big is that demand? How big is that demand, and should we respond to that demand in terms of our design tools as a district? So it was a fabulous document. It's incredible. It gives us so much richness to take out to our community.
Thank you. And our last comment, Councillor Stewart. You had a... Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I may have missed it somewhere, but can someone just enlighten me how many responses there actually were to the City Scan survey?
Did you get that, Rosemary?
Yes, I did. Where did I put that?
23,000.
So the people in the, I don't have on the top of the head the number of people who were actually at the community groups. I can get that, but the actual focus groups, there were 61 participants, individual participants, not including staff and steering group members who often came to lots of them because of their interest. And the online survey had 51 responses, but of all the other groups in the list, all the other groups had numerous people at each of those groups listed.
So the results that we're seeing here basically are from 120 or so people?
Sorry, the results of?
The City Scan?
No, sorry, could I explain? So the City Scan was a tool that the steering group used and answered, and then took it out as a basis of discussion, and then the city.
Who actually decided how each of these things were scored?
The City Scan was scored by the steering group, and we did take feedback from community after that.
So this is the steering group's opinion as to these issues, not the people of Rotorua's opinions.
Could I just clarify? The City Scan was quite early in the. It was simply provided material for us to discuss with people before we developed the strategy, and this appendix is just a summary of that scoring that happened. And there's another document with all the evidence and statistics and reports that sits behind that. That gives a lot more information to all of how that was scored. So there's quite a lot. This is just very much a very summary bit of that whole report.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. If you were actually taking this out to gain people's opinions, wouldn't it have been a good idea to have actually used this as the basis to get people's opinions from all these participants while you were doing it? Instead of just presenting them with a fait accompli of what you've already thought?
No, that's exactly what we did. We used this, we took the information and said, so this is what we thought, what do you think about these issues? One of the obvious things that came back was that the City Scan, there's a category that talks about water management, and we scored that reasonably well because we have reticulated water supplies and so on here. But in the public, that was interpreted as that water is not an issue here, and they came back very strongly and said, no, water is a critical issue here. The lakes and the water quality is a critically important issue, and we certainly, there's the number of things where they said, no, we don't agree with you, and that influenced the strategy writing.
So what is printed here in this document in terms of how we score on various things is the end result after you've gone out with the City Scan that you decided have got people's opinions on, and this is the modified result, or is this what you went to them with?
That's what we went to them with.
So this is not the end result?
We didn't change it. We said that it was what it was, and that's what we discussed with people, and then we moved on from there once we were developing the strategy.
Would it not have been better for this document to actually reflect the people's reactions and what they thought, rather than what the committee thought?
That's what the strategy represents, is what people thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to add, I have to say before we went out with the City Scan, it wasn't only steering group, it was also other people like Rotorua, I know Rosemary spoke to different groups around the city. I think probably we haven't got a total number of people that fed into this, but it was very big. That's unfortunate we didn't actually write everyone down, but Winton, would you like to add?
I recognise your concern, and it's a concern that I had coming into this at the beginning as well, and that is that the research would be subject to a selection bias, that the people that came along had an interest in this area and it would be an interest in a certain direction. What we hope to achieve is to have the underpinnings of this city scan based on evidence and not on opinion. So we started with gathering whatever evidence we could under each of those areas, objective, research, and using that as our basis to go to the community. So that when those ideas that were expressed through the city scan were expressed to the community and were challenged, we could say, well, this is the evidence that we're relying on. What's the basis for your opinion? And is it just anecdotal? So there's as you're no doubt aware, there's a balance to be struck between objective, in policy making, between objective evidence and the will of the people. And that's what this document, in addition to the huge scope that's involved here and the complexity of those issues, not all of which can be quantified in terms of cost benefit that you rightly point to, those are the issues that we've had to deal with, and we did it, as best as we can. But I recognise the concern about selection bias. We've tried to eliminate that through an underpinning that's based on objective evidence.
And thank you very much for that very good explanation, actually, I thought, as to the methodology that was used. And our community is very diverse, and I think in our community now they'll see that, the diversity of our community reflected in the range of opinions. So I want to thank you again. I am going to now put that, there's been a mover and a seconder, and, excuse me, where are we? We've got the recommendations up there. That the committee recommends to council, I better turn my head this way so I can actually see it, the approval of the draft sustainable living strategy for community distribution and discussion, and 3, that the steering group be thanked for their work. Very much so. So it's been moved and seconded, moved by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. Right, recommendation 2, the Rotorua Economic Development, thank you very much. Rotorua Economic Development Limited Statement of Intent. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Thank you, Councillor Sharank. Thank you, Councillor McVicker. That the report, Rotorua Economic Development Limited Statement of Intent, be received. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. Good afternoon, John Paul and Amy. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, this is very much a process item. As you can see in the background, during the time that we received the first or the draft statement of intent from Grow Rotorua Limited, we are obviously in the midst of the review of how we delivered economic development services, which has been ongoing, kicked off really before Christmas. So if you recall, the recommendation that was passed when we did receive that statement of intent from Grow Rotorua was that it be the new board be asked to reflect the recommendations of that service review. So obviously this is now the document that does reflect those, and for those councillors clearly who would have gone through it. It picked up on those 3 key areas that were the focus of the new CCO, so primarily business development, investment attraction and tourism growth. So you can see that the document's focused in 2 levels. Firstly, talking about the outcomes around those 3 key areas, but then also starting to highlight the potential activities. So this is the document that's now been through the CCO board, and the chair has passed it back to us to take through to council.
Thank you. And just before you, Amy, before you speak, we should also have a copy today which has the print a little bit larger, because I know some people had a bit of difficulty reading it. I think you've all got copies of that, hopefully. That was distributed today. Is that correct, Carol? Yes, yes. It was a little bit unclear in some areas and people having difficulty. So thank you very much. You're open to questions. Is that where we're at now? Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Thank you. My first question is, where the heck did Rotorua Economic Development Limited come from? I must have been asleep then.
Yes, no, that's been around for a little while. The Rotorua Economic Development Limited.
I understood that we moved, that we were, it was going to be under the auspices of the existing Grow Rotorua Limited.
I don't think it was merging. I'll just I'll just get that clarified thing. I thought
Yeah.
it was the merging and it was going to be a new, this
So
was the name.
That is the legal entity name. So we needed, because it was becoming into effect on the 1st of July, it needed a name for its legal entity. And so that's a working name at this point. The actual trading name is still to be determined, I think, in terms of exactly what it will be, is my understanding. And the choice of the legal name was basically just we're looking at what we currently have for Rotorua Contracting Limited and Rotorua Airport Limited. So it was Rotorua Economic Development Limited until the trading name was determined.
Thank you.
Yep, that's right.
Thank you. Yes, Your Worship.
Yeah, thank you for this. Just on page 6, and it is quite small print, but the investment attraction, where are we putting the development of the digital strategy? Where does that sit, Amy? Yes.
Okay, so strategy development in this, in terms of the model, actually sits within council, within the strategy team, within my team. So that's where it sits, and actually the intention is to bring that digital strategy to the next SPNF, assuming we get through the final sort of changes and amendments and so on.
And Madam Chair, just adding to that, obviously the other part of that link to the strategy function is also the visitor strategy. So if you recall, we've very much made this CCO operationally focused, so the strategy will still come out of council, and so Andrew through Amy will be working within the regional growth study, and one of those key actions was to establish a visitor strategy for the Bay of Plenty, of which it would be broken down into 4 elements initially, where we'd lead off and do our visitor strategy first.
Tourism growth. We've got 1, targeted relationship management, engagement and dialogue at a local and national level. Do we not include regional? So we sort of left that out. It's number 1 in tourism growth.
Through Madam Chair, I think we'd probably assumed that we were taking that view from local through national, which would include regional. So I think you're right. We probably should have just had the word regional in there to be explicit as well.
Yeah, I think we should.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor McVicker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions, if I may. Firstly, page 23, the introduction. Just clarification, this combination of the CCO and Rotorua Destination Marketing plus the eyesight, correct? You don't mention the eyesight anywhere. Okay. Over the page, page 24, guiding principles. I note there's a criteria not duplicating or competing with activities of the private sector. How practical is that? And the other question is, where do event and venues fit in relation to the big picture?
2 very good questions, and I think the key here is the guiding principle. So the intention there is to look hard at whether there is an adequate service being provided within the private sector, or if there's a market failure. So that is one of the principles that they will look at when they think about their activities and what's being undertaken in that space. So I think there's no absolute black and white answer, but it's certainly one of the principles they have to look at quite carefully. And the second part of your question related to events and venues. If you recall, events and venues, the decision there was to hold it within the council organisation, and there has been significant discussion during the review about whether that was the right decision, and that went further in not being just events and venues, but whether that was related to major events or so. At this stage, it is in the main organisation, or the main council organisation, but certainly some arrangements have been established to make sure that some of that reporting of what's happening in the major events space and events and venues in its totality is made across to the board.
Down the bottom, investment attraction, where does manufacturing sit? See, it's not included in that category unless it's under sustainable alternative land use. Because in the past, I think we've always sold the story about Rotorua, tourism, forestry, farming and manufacturing.
I think it's not listed here as one of the the key priority areas identified, but I think and it is an obvious part of our economy, and actually one of the valuable contributors to our economy. We're very lucky in having a very diverse economy, which does include the manufacturing sector, and I think it gets picked up in the businesses wishing to expand, but also to move here as well. So it is a focus that would need to be picked up by the CCO, if not specifically mentioned here within this list.
Financials. All we're told here, 4.23 million. I presume in time we will see a budget, and I know it's rather quickly. It's happening pretty quickly these days. So, will we see a budget?
Looking across at Thomas, one of the things that we'll be establishing on the back of this is the funding agreement, which then talks about what are the one-year objectives for this organisation in passing over the annual funding. I think part of that reporting back by the CCO to this council will include what they intend to do with that funding. Now, whether that gets down to how they're going to spend it is possibly not the right level. That's the decisions of that board to make. But certainly with the bulk funding and the areas of their key objectives to achieve these outcomes and support the activities that are identified in there, that should be covered within their quarterly reporting and their business plan.
Thank you. Councillor Kent?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just coming to the guiding principles on page 24, I just wonder if we could tidy these up a bit, because quite honestly I'm struggling with the use of English here, to put it mildly. Can someone actually tell me what driving a customer-centric approach to seamless service delivery actually means in English?
Well, I think it is a customer-centric approach. I mean, I've got the words in front of me exactly here, but I mean, I think it's quite clear in terms of it is basically being very focused on their customers and offering a seamless experience. You don't want it, I mean, that's what we aspire to, I think, in all of our activities with our customers within councils, to try to be customer-focused and to offer a good experience, and seamless meaning not having to duplicate who you're talking to or getting dropped in any place, and actually having a clear, clean run at what you're trying to purchase or get service delivered to you.
Okay, well, could I suggest that perhaps it might be easier to spell out some of these principles a little bit more clearly? They might be easier to follow. My second question under the guiding principles is, how are they going to assist with reducing regulatory barriers? I thought that was our job.
Through Madam Chair, I think the key word there is assisting. So one of the key things for the CCO is to maintain a significant range and reach of networks and relationships into our community, and particularly the business, tourism and investment community. So one of the things that will be really important to us is to supply back to us those insights and the intelligence that we need to undertake our regulatory functions usefully and in a supportive way for our economic growth in this district.
So it's more identification of than anything else. Okay, thank you. Flipping over to page 28 and the monitoring indices, how are they going to have any impact whatsoever on net international migration figures?
Sorry, Councillor, which page are we on? We're on page
28.
28. Councillor, if you just go through, basically what we've got identified here is we're talking about some macro trends that we're trying to see positive outcomes for. So this is sort of that outcome level. So the causality is not specific. So these are the trend directions. So this is the high level. So what's happening with the outcomes? So we would want to see increasing net migration. Now, to then turn around and say to the CCO, you're specifically responsible for that is not appropriate. So that's why it's split into two parts. So at the moment, the phase one is what are the overall outcomes to be expected or achieved if we're going in the right economic direction for the district or the region within New Zealand nationally. And what hasn't been identified yet, but will be part of phase two, is to identify the specific KPIs which reflect the business activities and the deliverables of the CCO. So the CCOs, what are you doing? What are those specific metrics we need to measure that reflect your performance, and how, and at the same time, we're looking at a global picture of how that contributes to what should be the trends or the outcomes for the city, district and region.
And just it's quite clear under 4.1 at the above the table where it says, however, they are not the measure of performance for the organisation.
Thank you very much. Your Worship?
If I could speak to that, that's a very important indicator because it's one of the indicators of growth. And so if we're going to see, are we going into the fast growth area, which is something we, would aspire to for economic gain for our community, that's one after a decade of net migration loss and growth of only 0.01%, we are now seeing a net migration gain. And so it's a very important indicator for us to be measuring in terms of investment growth and growth in our community. But the one that I'm a bit concerned about, we have no measure in here about youth. So we've got unemployment rates, and I think that's important as another growth indicator, but I'm particularly interested in our young people. And one of the indicators that the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs is really concerned about are the NEETs, those young people not in employment, educational training. And I think it could be a really valuable indicator to have here, that are we focusing on getting our young children into work, education or training? And that is a concern in the regional growth study, and I think we should have it in here so that our young people can aspire to ultimately getting training or a job here in Rotorua. So I'd like to see the NEETs in there. Thank you.
Through Madam Chair, I think that's a very good suggestion for us to take in as a subset, and certainly it's an issue that's been raised by councillors before when we were talking about the last quarterly monitoring report against our goals. So we heard loud and clear at that point that we really do need to get hold of those figures on a quarterly basis so that we've got that clarity about the impact on youth. So we're certainly pursuing that, and it will be useful to do that with the CCO as well.
Thank you. Ms Morrison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following on from Her Worship's comment, around some measures around sort of the equity. So I note in here there's job seekers and unemployment. And, we've got a high Māori youth population, and they'll be coming through, and there'll be a big sort of bubble in the next 10 years, and those will be our working force and our taxpayers and our ratepayers. So perhaps some sort of tracking, because it looks quite low there, but we know that the Māori unemployment rate is much, much higher, and if we're going to grow as a community, we need to take everyone along with us rather than have a long equity tail. The other question I had was, once this statement of intent is enacted, it will be given to the CCO to develop their work plan. At certain points in time, there will be decisions made at the strategy committee which will impact or change perhaps their focus. For instance, this one, that number 10, of the regional government investing in regional sectors. How will they then, the flow of information go through to them, and then be able to be agile enough to reflect the changes that council's having in its strategy?
I think that's a multifaceted answer, and I think the key here is to say there's a direct relationship with us writing to the CCO and asking them through the funding agreement or for modifications through the funding agreement if we want them to change a particular focus or activity or to recognise a particular activity. The other input I would say is that as we're developing the strategies, particularly through the Economic Growth Advisory Group, that will be another important link back into the CCO, and obviously the key relationship we have there is that the chair of the CCO, Peter Stubbs, also sits on that Economic Growth Advisory Group. So I think there's two ways. There's the direct line in that formal relationship we have with the CCO, and there's also the informal and evolutionary, growing, iterative process that we'll have in place around the relationship with that Economic Growth Advisory Group as well.
Councillor Gould, then Councillor Whipper, then Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the report on page 33. Your communication protocols, early notifications and collaboration on management and risks and issues. There are times where investors or developers want to keep things quiet, and they will go through a process, and a number of occasions the development doesn't go ahead because they've got outside information which the council is not aware of. I think sometimes they want to keep it very quiet. It says you've got early notification. I think there may be occasions where you can't get early notification. And the other thing is the SEO budget is 4.235 million, excluding the eyesight and partner programs. Does that mean if a particular project comes up which is over their budget, they can't go ahead with it, or will they have the opportunity of coming to council requesting funding for a particular high profile project?
Really, I would expect that the CCO and my understanding of the expectation really from the board itself is that they're quite comfortable with the view that they are given a significant amount of funding and through the funding agreement, and they would be looking at their priorities within their business plan and would adapt their business plan to recognise any changes that come through or they need to respond to. Clearly that does not prohibit them coming back to council, but I would say that would be fairly unlikely for them to come back and say, hey, this has come over the horizon, we need more money, or we need to add another activity or make another change. Look, there is that obviously opportunity for them to do that, but I wouldn't have thought that would be a likely approach. They're funded to a significant level to undertake quite a broad level of activities that does give them significant scope to adjust their priorities and move forward in those areas. And really the key is to meet our overall funding outcomes and to meet the metrics that we put in place for them.
Yes, I think that's somewhat difficult to know how the board of directors to gauge what they might think when they come up against something that's a bit out there, I think. Do you have another? No? Thank you. Councillor Whipper?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a very simple question on the Economic Growth Advisory Group. I must be missing something, but I can't see who's on it. I'm guessing it's Councillor Donaldson's steering group. And so, we've got the names listed of those on the CCO. I just wondered if we could have the names of those on the advisory group, because it's a particularly important role.
Thank you. I did see them somewhere, but they're not in here. The directors are. I think so. No, they're not in here because this is the new entity, isn't it? That's right. Maybe they haven't actually chosen as to who they might be.
Yes, we have.
That's right.
Yeah, we have, Madam Chair.
Oh, you have?
Yep.
Thank you.
Give me 2 seconds, I'll write them all down.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Tapsell.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. My questions have actually been answered, which was from Mayor Chadwick and also Anna Morrison, so that was good. But just in response to Councillor Kent's comments about the wording and the guiding principles, I'm actually quite happy with the wording that's there. I think we don't want to, I'm quite happy with it. I think it's been written with good thought into it for the people that will actually be reading it, so yeah, I'm happy with that.
Now, do we have a mover and a seconder? I am going to wait to see with the names coming forward, but do we have a mover and a seconder? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Webber. Moved by Councillor Webber, seconded by Councillor McVicker. And you're just... Thank you.
I think I'm pretty much there, Madam Chair, and if I can apologise if I miss any. So there is Jeff Williams and Peter Stubbs, who we all know. Anna Morrison here is a member, along with Greg Brown, Brett Marvelly, Jeff Rolliston, Frank Zhou from the Chinese Community of Commerce, and myself.
Right.
And Anna will help me if I've missed anyone at this stage. And John
Green?
No. John Green till the end of the year.
Right.
And also John McRae.
Oh, yes, from Deloitte's, isn't it?
Yep.
Is he from
And
Deloitte?
Tim Cossa.
And Tim Cossa.
I see. Thank you. That's quite a large group. Very good. Very good. Well, thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded that the committee recommends to council to accept the statement of intent as presented today. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you, carried. Yes, thank you. Councillor Donaldson?
Can I just say that I value all the input from councillors on this. I have a weekly catch-up call with the chairman of the CCO, Peter Stubbs, every Friday morning, so I have a discussion with him, and I'll pass the feedback from elected members back to him. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to look at the urgent business now, which was, sorry, beg your pardon. So we're going to have a quick look at the remits. I know they were circulated, and it seems to me that they've been before local government on a number of occasions, haven't they? But however, you might want to put some comments. They have been circulated today. They went out some time ago. They were distributed some time ago. So are we all up to speed on that? They're the 7 local government New Zealand AGM remits to be considered next week, isn't it, Your Worship? That's right. So we'd like to get some views to the Mayor. So they have been distributed today. And some councillors, thank you very much to those who have actually responded. Thank you. But are there anything, and Your Worship, you'd like to talk to this? And
yes, they're all, I think, relatively easy to support. The only remit that, just for your heads up for those not coming, the relocation of government services to regional centres, remit 10, I've been asked by the Mayor of Taupō District Council to speak to that because he can't make the AGM. So this is provincial New Zealand rising up saying, you know, do a bit of decentralisation. So I think that's great, but just so you know that I can't see anything in here that we couldn't support myself. The only one that I don't have clarity on from you is whether you want the beverage container deposit system. Yeah. This has come from Palmerston North City Council, remit 13 on page 51. It's pretty harmless. It's just it's something through the waste minimisation plan when they're looking at waste stream reduction and minimisation and looking at markets. This is something that they think will incentivise people to take their empties back and get some money in return. Yep.
Through you, Madam Chair, if I may, it's like the old, you know, you got money back if you took your Coke bottle back. It's that again, isn't it? Which people rather like that. It was good for kids earning money.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there Councillor Kent?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just the freedom camping issue on page 19. Has anyone actually bothered to show this to the Lakes Community Board, who I think is quite a hot button for them, and I think perhaps it wouldn't hurt just to have a quick chat with them before you go?
I can speak to that. Been very vocal in our pamphlet and been very helpful, so their editorial changes reflected in our pamphlet for distribution. They'd be very supportive of this remit. So this is one that I spoke to at regional and provincial. You may remember I was on a panel with Mackenzie, Queenstown and Rotorua as high value tourism towns about the move to regulating camper vans, and so there was great support there from rural and provincial New Zealand. Those without a toilet need to go to camping grounds. Yeah.
The Stewart.
Madam Chair, just the one that has been up on a number of times is the one regarding the plastic bags and the attempt to ban those again. My view is I think that should be strongly supported. Having owned a supermarket in our day, we had paper bags that were recyclable, and you know, to see swans and ducks and God knows what else out in the lake with these strapped around their neck isn't a pretty sight. So I'd encourage us all to get behind that. I think it will get supported. It's had support before, but fallen at the 11th hour, eh? Yeah, I don't know why, but whether commercial interests stepped in, I'm not sure. But From a
One we
sustain-
were looking for from
Oh.
Councillor Webber's portfolio.
Definitely that's come through from some people in the community. They were asking us to do it individually, and we did say, well, we should really try and do it nationally first. Actually coming through from the ideas from Melbourne today, which I haven't read in detail, they were saying how we could actually do some local initiatives to support that anyway, locally, but certainly we should be trying nationally.
Thank you. Councillor Kent?
I just wonder whether that conflicts with the move away from paper rubbish bags to plastic rubbish bags.
They're biodegradable. They're
Yeah,
biodegradable.
Plastic bins.
Maybe the remit should be that all plastic bags should be biodegradable.
We could add that.
Yes, you could.
We
yes,
could add that
yes.
to the amendment. Yep, that
That's
makes
good.
good
Thank
sense from Rotorua. Yep.
Thank you. I don't think there's any requirement for actually to be moved, but I think the mayor will note that. And if there's no further business on those remits going to the local government conference next week or AGM next week, Your Worship, thank you. And to all of our members who are going to the AGM or to the conference, thank you very much, and I think you'll have a great time there. It's quite interesting. I've looked at the program. So, thank you very much. And just before we move into... no, actually, sorry, you wanted to... Thank you, Jeff.
Through you, Madam Chair. Councillors, prior to making a final decision with regards to where best to hear the paper on the Polynesian Spa price paper, what I'd like to do is just spend a few moments going through with you the rationale that staff used for recommending that this paper be heard in confidence. And there are a number of aspects to that I would urge you to consider prior to making a final decision. The first one effectively is that the information that was intended to be provided to you today, the financial implications or the financial information that backs up the recommended changes, some of this is confidential to the operator, and they will not be able to actually provide that to you in a public session. Secondly, and I think possibly very much more importantly, the other aspect is that there is the potential for an unintended impact on the reputation of Polynesian Spa of a public debate on a proposal for increase in price. Now, that may leave council exposed if it was actually later observed that that reputation damage resulted in a financial loss for the operation. The other side of that is that Polynesian Spa is a key industry for Rotorua and is promoted as such in terms of our destination marketing. If it was happened that during a public debate that any reputation damage occurred, clearly that could also impact on Destination Rotorua's ability around our destination marketing initiative. The last aspect is that the operation is also looking to develop an effective communication strategy around any changes in price. If this paper is actually heard in open, then effectively you are immediately releasing the intended changes in price, which in turn removes any ability for the operation to develop an effective communication strategy to explain how and why and so on. So those are the criteria that staff used when they were looking to recommend to you that this is actually a matter that would be best held and confidential. So notwithstanding the fact that it is your decision ultimately to decide where this paper is best held, I just wanted to actually provide you with a clear view as to why staff recommended to you that it should be in confidential.
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Williams, and it is good to know that, the rationale, because I did say initially at the start of our meeting that I saw no reason why it couldn't be brought into the public section of our agenda today. But I can clearly see that we would be jumping the gun. Our communication strategy will be out there tonight or tomorrow on anything that we might agree at this point in time. The other thing, of course, is that we might not agree, and that really does raise some issues. So I'd like we could have a quick discussion and then put it to each. Yes, thank you, Councillor McVicker.
Madam Chair, can I ask the Chief Executive, I think he used the words commercially sensitive. Information I'm looking at is no different to what we have seen in previous years when we've debated it in public. I don't see anything there which is going to be overly sensitive. I get the gist about the communication plan issue, but historically it's always been in public, and there's nothing here that I can see that will not be made public. And then I hear it's probably in the public arena already.
I'm just really trying to remember, I actually thought it was in confidence, and I'm not listening to the fellow councillors because it's all from memory, isn't it? So I actually always thought it was in confidence when we looked at these price increases. So rather than just listening to someone who has a memory of it, I'd like to actually know if that's true or not.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll see if we can do something there. Councillor Stewart. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Chairman, I was chairman of Parks, and these fees and charges were never done in a confidential situation. They were always done in public session. The only ones that were in confidential were where they were our asset out at Waikiri Valley. And we did those in confidential because they provided us with a development plan of how they were going to further develop it, because it was our asset. So I agree with Councillor McVicker. I've got no problem with this being done. There is nothing commercially sensitive in the paper in front of us. Communication plan, yes, when that comes forward, that should be in, because that's a commercially sensitive document. That should be in confidential, but certainly their fees and charges have always been, as I recollect, as chairman of Parks and Reserves, that they were held in public session.
I'll ask Jeff. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I can go back to Councillor McVicker's question about the information in the paper. So we have the financial officer for Polynesian Spa with us today, and the expectation that we set was that you may ask for justification, financial justification, as to why these proposals have been put to you today. That would necessitate disclosure of financial information that is not necessarily in the report, and that is the information that may not be able to be provided to you. That was the point that I was making.
Thank you, because the full financial details are not actually enclosed in this paper here. Thank you.
I said to the chief, I had a meeting with the chief executive officer and team this morning regarding the sport and recreation strategy, and I had 3 phone calls last night about this confidential document. So this is out in the public arena already. So and aghast that we were going to put the prices up. So I think the only commercially sensitive thing that's in the paper is that they've made an investment of $2 million and want to recover some of the costs. Other than that, I don't want to know any more.
Thank you. I'll just take a few more. I'll just have a few more councillors would like to speak, and then we'll. Ms. Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Chief Executive for those additional comments. I actually do want to know more, and I've got a long list of questions, and I think that it would be prudent if we can have full disclosure from and have those questions answered. I've got some issues with the paper,
what's being presented.
I'd like to know a little bit more about, and I think it's safer for the business of the Polynesian pools if that happens in confidential, and then.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison, because you may well be raising issues that some of us might not have thought about, and that we will not be able to get the answers if we don't go into public excluded. Councillor Gould, then.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If the financial officer of Polynesian Spa wants to keep it in confidential, then we should keep it in confidential.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to sort of read what I received this morning, which might help to clarify where I'm coming from and why I raised the issue. Just said, I noted the following article in today's Daily Post online edition would like to draw our attention to the spa pool entry fee increases, and gives the link. I'm one of the monthly pass holders. We knew of this increase of $5 to new price of $48 for entry between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. and after 7 p.m. is to go up to $52, an increase of $17. The amounts to increase are not the issue here. How come we, users, knew of this last week before the council meeting takes place that is supposed to approve them?
Well, we don't know how people get hold of information, and so, but that shouldn't determine how we operate our business. So we don't know.
No,
We
but
unfortunately.
my point is,
It's
have these figures already been approved by staff prior to this
these
meeting?
these are their.
Or, I mean, that is the question that is being raised, rather than should we hear it in confidential?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Yes, listening to Anna, Ms Morrison, I think it's very prudent of us actually to go into confidential. If as a new representative sitting around the table, she wishes to ask more questions about the structure and of the lease and the arrangements, I think that's very prudent of her, and I'm happy to support that.
Thank you. Well, I don't know the nature of the questions that are likely to come from Ms Morrison, but
No.
I tend to agree that there may be something there that we haven't perhaps thought about, or in the past, that is. Councillor Donaldson, and then I'm going to rule on this matter.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Similarly, I would support the matter being debated in confidential, but before we did that, I just want to pick up on a point that Councillor Sturt made, because I recently had to meet with one of our leaseholders for a council asset. So what is the difference between Waikiki and Polynesian Spa? My understanding is we're not the owner of the asset. We're the holder of a lease on the site, or we're the landowner for the site. So what's the difference between, for
Do they both
example-
come under the Reserves Act, though?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't sure.
That's what I would find interesting.
Yes.
Before they could factor in what their charges would be. So I think that's a little bit different to this. I mean, I've got some questions too on the lease, but I think they should be asked in public.
Councillor Donaldson? Oh, thank you. I don't know what I did there. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to... this item will remain in the... Sorry? Oh, Robbie. Thank you. Yes, if you've got something to add, please. Yes, I'm happy to take any additional information that might help us. Is that...
Through you, Madam Chair, if I can I just want to make very clear for Councillor Kent that there has been no approval of these prices, and nor have the prices been implemented by the operator.
Thank you. That is the clarification that I was seeking.
Thank you.
Councillor Stewart's partially correct with the Waikiki thermal pools in that we do own some of the asset. The reason it's normally in confidential is because council's income is derived directly from what they get, so it's a percentage of what they make. So in terms of justifying their increases in the entry fees based on what they pay to council and so on, they need to have full disclosure of their financial accounts. And that's why we go into confidential.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was it? Thank you very much. Right. Now, before we go into confidential, I'd like to call for mover and a seconder that Heather Keith be permitted to remain at this meeting after the public has been excluded because of her knowledge of recommendation for the Polynesian Spa entry charges increase August 2016. So that needs to be put as a resolution. So I'd like to call for a mover and a seconder. Yes, it does. It needs to be put as a motion. Yes, but this one comes first before we actually then... Oh, the other way around, is it? Sorry, I beg your pardon, I've got it the wrong way around. I'm sorry. So I'd like to call for a mover and a seconder that the committee move into public excluded session. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Gould. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. I'll put that motion that the committee move into public excluded session. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Thank you. Yes, thank you. We'll call for a division. All those in favour that the committee move into the public excluded session, please raise your right hand. Thank you. I think that's definitely carried. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Please raise your right hand again because we do have to have the names recorded. And please, those against, will please raise your right hand. Thank you. Got those? Thank you. A point of order being raised. Yes, Councillor Stewart. Thank you. No, I agree with you. I think that would be a good way to proceed, Councillor Stewart. There are some questions that we would like to ask, some councillors would like to ask, and they can be answered because we do have here Heather Keith. So I'm going to move that in a minute, that she be able to sit in on this, obviously. And then we can move out of confidential into the public again session and for that recommendation. Is that what you're proposing? Thank you. Thank you. Here's another point of order.
Yes, it's not the only item in confidential. So is the Economic Development Board appointments. So are we going to...
So
which one are we going to...
So we'll take this one first then.
Okay,
we'll take this
thank
one
you.
first so that we can come straight out and then... So it'll be moving into it twice. Have I got that right? All right, thank you. Right, thank you. So Councillor Stewart has moved. And a seconder, please. Thank you, Ms Morrison. So we're going into confidential, and this is also that Heather Keith be permitted to remain at this meeting after the public has been excluded because of her knowledge of recommendation 4, Polynesian Spa entry charges increase August 2016. Oh, there we are. This knowledge will be of assistance and is relevant to the matter to be discussed because she is Polynesian Spa's accountant. Do we need to add there that fact that we will come back out of... Do we need to add there, Jeff? I think that we need to add there that it was noted that the motion will be passed on the fees. Thank you. Will be heard in public. Yes. Which will necessitate made in public, an open session. Thank you. Well, look, I'm going to put that. That's sufficient to get us to where we want to go to. Thank you. So I will put that. It's been moved by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Ms Morrison, and I will put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. Carried. Thank you. So we'll ask. Yes, certainly. If we can just take 5. Thank you.